Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Schifrin, and I'm calling the meeting to order of the Planning Board for Monday, June 13th, 2022 at 6:40 p.m. Sorry for the delay. Going to have a roll call, please, of the board members present.
Ian Ortiz present.
Carol Hoffs is present.
Mike Verosco present.
Laura Schifrin present. Is Robert on yet?
He's on mute.
Okay, Robert, can you unmute and
I'm
state
present.
your name? Okay, hi.
Hi.
Glad to see you all already. Having the roll call, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you to all our veterans and all our military that continue to serve us. The meeting is being recorded. And right now under 1.4, I do not have any additions or deletions to add to this meeting. 1.5, review volunteer response forms received for the planning board vacancy. The vacancy was filled. Beth, has the affiliate position been posted?
Not yet. It will be
I'm sorry, the associate position.
the associate position, correct? Yeah, it will be posted tomorrow.
Okay.
not yet.
So Ian has been sworn in as a full member, and we welcome him. He was very participatory as our associate member, and we appreciate that he has stepped in. So now we will be looking for an associate member for anybody who's interested in volunteering for that position. So thank you for that. And the approval of the minutes. Did we?
You do not have a copy of the minutes. I was not able to finish them up before the meeting.
Okay, so 1.6 will be moved to our next meeting. Thank you. Okay, and now under 2, which is the public hearings, and this is where I need to make that statement. Because that's the next thing, but it's not at 6:45. It was at 7:45.
Yeah, you're pretty close.
I'm looking for your statement. Okay. So due to the discrepancy in public process, I'm reading the whole thing. At 6:45, open a continuation of the public hearing. Oh, can I do that now? At 6:43, or do I have to wait?
You should wait.
Okay, so under 3.1, do we have the addendum amendment ready for, because I didn't see that, for the master plan update? Beth, we
So,
have the goals added for the
housing production plan?
yes.
Nope, there's nothing been done. I have been on vacation, and if tonight you want to, during your work session, I can send the link to the board for the master plan folder. You guys should have it. It hasn't changed at all from last meeting. So you can do that if it pleases the board to go back and work on that.
Okay. And the safe routes to schools, we have less than a minute. Carol, do you have anything to report on that tonight?
No, I don't have any updates tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carol. So we are at 6:45. Open the continuation of the public hearing of 32 Main Street. And I do not have to read the notice at this time. announce the discrepancy of the continuation of the public hearing for 32 Main Street. Two different notices with different times were advertised to the public. I need to ask the board to vote for a continuation of the 6:45 public hearing until 7:45 p.m. This will consolidate the two public hearings. Do I have a motion to continue the public hearing for 32 Main Street until 7:45 p.m.?
I shall move.
Robert, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Just in the discussion part, Beth, could you explain what happened?
Oh, well, the board voted to continue the hearing for 32 Main Street site plan review at their April 11th, 2022 meeting at the request of the applicant, who was not, did not have the material submitted. The hearing was continued to tonight at 6:45. I did post that with the town clerk. It's been posted for quite some time. However, when I posted the agenda for the meeting, I posted the hearing at 7:45. So it was advertised in, you know, in the wrong way for tonight's agenda. So in all fairness, you needed to do this process of continuing it.
Okay, I just wanted them to know what they were voting on and why. Okay.
Yeah.
So having said that, I need the board to have a roll call vote to change it to 7:45, and then we'll need to have a vote to close, to close this part of it, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I need a roll call vote to the motion just made and seconded.
Robert Therian, I
Aye,
vote to continue. Yeah.
okay,
I second it.
okay.
Carol Hoff says yes. To continue.
Okay,
Mike Roscoe, yes.
Okay, and Laura Schifrin, yes. So that means that, and now I need to close this part of the meeting to reopen at the 7:45. So,
Hearing. Mhm.
hearing. Close this part of the hearing. Yeah, not the meeting. Sorry.
It's okay.
Maybe that's because I'd like to do that. So, yes, to close this part of the hearing. I need a roll call vote to close it.
Mike Roscoe, yes.
Robert,
Ian Ortiz, yes.
Carol Hoff says yes.
And Robert?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Just for clarification, Madam Chair, so you're just opening it,
And closing it,
and reopening it at 7:45, not another date?
no, tonight at 7:45.
Okay, thanks.
And
We'll see you
just-
then.
Because of the commute. Yes, I'm sorry for any inconvenience. That this
Okay,
is-
no problem.
is here.
I'll log back in a bit. Bye-bye.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So we'll go into work session now until 7:45. What I'd like to do, if it's okay with the board, is to go at this point to 3.3, the Stormwater Management Permitting Process and Regulations, and 3.4, Stormwater Permit Inspection Reports, other related correspondence. And I would like to turn this over to Michael, or Mike Crowley.
Both work. I'm good. Hi, folks. Yep, thanks. So we'd had a conversation our last meeting about stormwater management. Just as a background for that, Townsend has a stormwater management bylaw and stormwater management regulations in the planning board regulations. And generally speaking, when projects come in, they fall into one or two categories, major or minor. There are pretty good regulations spelling out at which point if the threshold is hit and it moves to a major project, at which point the threshold is hit and it moves to the minor project. But one of the things that is specific in our regulations is that all projects need stormwater management. And I can appreciate the intent with that, but I brought up the question because I wanted to make sure that that was fully reflected of what the board wanted, because that means that if you wanted to repave a driveway, that's a project. If you wanted to put in a deck or a swing set, that's a project. There's nothing in the regulations that says it has to be a project that also needs other permits. In fact, we have one residential project right now that needs no permits aside from stormwater management. It was a bigger project that is currently within a very specific category that was already laid out in the regulations. But I wanted to come to the planning board and have a discussion about the fact that there was, I felt that it might be worth considering having another category, which is a no significant impact category. Basically, that's for smaller projects that wouldn't normally trigger the need for stormwater management, that might have a very reduced impact, whether they were small residential projects, like I'm putting a shed in my backyard or something of those lines. So we had that conversation. It seemed like the planning board wanted to have some more discussion about it. So that was great. I did some work and put together what could be kind of a draft of some sort of a form to kind of acknowledge that no significant impact, and I can share that in just a second. I would say that I think if this is something the planning board feels is appropriate to address, it should definitely be addressed in regulations at some point. Because as it is, when applicants come in right now with questions or queries about projects, whether they're dropping off an application or just considering it, we guide them to the regulations to say, these are the regulations that we all follow. And so if there is something that needs to get changed, I think it's worthwhile to have some regulatory review. But this application that I'm about to share is just kind of the idea that if the planning board wanted to address this in the regulations, but obviously wanted to spend the time working through it and go through the appropriate process, this could be something that would be a guidance document for us to work on while that revision was happening, basically. So is that everyone up to speed on why we're looking at this? Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I had asked this in an email to you. When was the regulation voted by the planning board or the town? Or who?
So like I said, there's two different things. There's the bylaw. The bylaw was adopted at special town meeting in November of 2007. That bylaw doesn't include the specifics of what's a major and minor project. It just includes that stormwater management is something that needs to happen. Specifically, the regulation that has that major project, minor project, and calls out that all projects need to be included was added in June of 2014.
So 2007 and then 2014?
Mm-hmm.
So how have they been implementing it now?
Well, it's interesting. We have been, for major stormwater projects, that has been getting addressed through the processes, and Beth and you guys have seen some of those, including things like the solar array and things like that. The implementation for minor projects doesn't actually get elevated to the planning board. It gets handled by a designated agent that's spelled out in the regulations. But my instinct is that for the most part, prior to me being here, it was just basically ignored, unfortunately. It's just that it was difficult to understand and residents didn't know how to do it. And in particular, if you didn't need another, and I'm not willfully ignored, but like if you didn't need any applications to do a project, you wouldn't think, oh, let me go into some third tier regulation and see if it happens to include myself. And so in part of our work, trying to make what we do in town and our regulations here in town more transparent and upfront, we've kind of run into this like, oh, this is more prevalent than we had anticipated initially. So,
Well,
yeah.
we have, planning has addressed very few, to my knowledge, stormwater situations. Mostly when it's been a development of a larger scale kind of thing. But that's not what the regulation says. And I don't think that that is what was ever intended. And of course, as you said, people don't come to the planning board on a normal basis. So why would they even think that they should? It is not, I don't know that it's up to especially like somebody repaving their driveway. I mean, how many people have repaved their driveway since 2007 and no one ever said anything? I don't know that that should even be there. And when it was approved at a special town meeting, I'm going to highly doubt even a dozen people read it out of the people who voted that night. So I think this has caused more of a monster, in my opinion, granted they're my words, my opinion, than what we certainly want to do to people. That's not the intent. The intent is if there's going to be something major going on, then that has to be looked into. But certainly residential properties, I don't see a need. In this form that you have here, the no significant impact form.
Well, before we go into the form, can I just talk a little bit more about that? Because you do raise some very good points. I think that it's, in many ways, the challenge is a few words that were possibly not thought all the way through. So, for example, there was one section that says all projects. What they probably meant was all projects that fit under the major minor category, and then outline the process. However, it says all projects, and therefore it applies to all projects. And then again, if you've looked at the regulations, there's some very clear examples of what is major and what is minor. But in both of those, they say shall include but not be limited to, which again is actually really smart language, because if there's not something, if you're like, oh, if it's 60,000 square feet of pavement, that's obviously major, so I'm going to do 59,999 and get a minor. Well, it's probably still major even though it's 1 foot less. So they have good language, and it just worked out that section, that one line that says all projects, really did it. And kind of between that and the other language that they built in, which is again really good, well-written regulation that is easy accessible, residents can understand it. If you didn't take the time to read that one section and say, well, wait a minute, then you would end up with a totally different determination. So it could be even that the address that we want to make, or that the planning board wants to make, is to change all projects under the major minor category. That one sentence change would change the entire way the regulations get implemented. Which, I really would encourage. We're doing a lot of, now that we've got staff in the land use office, we're doing a lot of sitting down and looking at regulations and seeing how they're getting carried out. And I'll be back a dozen times over with, hey, this is a thing. What do you guys want? Is this appropriate for what you want? If so, I'll keep going with it. Otherwise, let me know. But it's one of those things that if you don't look at it very specifically, it's hard to miss. I will also say, in the process for stormwater management, the normal process for stormwater management applications is you reach out to the land use coordinator. He sits down with you, looks at your project, and determines if it's a major or minor project. If it's a major project, it gets elevated to the planning board. If it's a minor project, it gets to one of the designated representatives that are outlined in the regulations by the planning board.
How do you make that determination?
What's that?
How do you make that determination?
By the regulations. Is this the standard? So if it falls into a category on the regulations, that's when I make my standard, which is why I'm here, because according to the regulations, if I'm putting in a 3x3 square foot sandbox, that's a minor project according to the regulations. And I would never do anything that is not appropriate to what the regulations are, which is why I'm like, I'm going to come to the planning board and we're having a conversation about this and see if this is what they want. But in terms of the major minor, like I said, there are outlined examples. If I make a determination and the applicant disagrees with it, they can appeal it and it goes to the planning board. That's already well read out. Again, it's a pretty well laid out regulation. But my role has been basically vacant for 3 years. So there could have been 3 years of stormwater management applications. Every resident in town could have put one in to an email address that no one was answering for 3 years. So there was just a breakdown in the process. So we've got staff now. We're kind of making sure we're doing best practices going forward. So that's where we're at right now. And so, like I said, now I can share if you want, but I just wanted to address that because I want to make it clear. I don't think that people were being sinister in any way. I think they were just either didn't know, or maybe they were doing everything right and it was just ending up in an empty email box. So
I have a question, Mike.
yeah, Carol.
As a resident, why would I even think about if say my driveway's crumbling and I'm just repaving the driveway that's crumbled, I wouldn't in any manner think I even had to go to the town. I would just hire a paving company, come in, just repave my driveway. Why would
Absolutely.
I, as a resident, even think if I was going to put a swing set or replace my deck that's crumbling to even ask? I mean, how many people would even come and ask?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And to build on that, the way that you know what your requirements are for for stormwater, which is falls under the MS4 Massachusetts state standard, is there are requirements under MS4 for outreach that you're supposed to do to the public to help make sure that they know what stormwater is, why it's important, and ways they can manage it at home. The outreach is supposed to be sent out by the land use coordinator. But if you don't have a land use coordinator, or you don't have any staff and it's just Beth for 3 years, like not everything gets done, unfortunately. Even if it's, people were doing it, people were doing what they could. There was some outreach, but we put it up on a website, which counts as outreach. But that's not, hey, I'm going to go talk to a resident in their yard and have a good conversation. That's what the meaningful communication that comes with a full staff.
Even if you put it out on a website, as a homeowner, I would never even, it would never even cross my mind to even go look. If if just the driveway is crumbling, I just hire a Miller paving company, just repave my driveway. I'm not changing it, I'm just repaving it. So I wouldn't even think to even look at anything.
I very much appreciate where you're coming from. And honestly, as a resident, I would probably be in the same position as you if I was resident in town and had not done this. Again, I'm not pointing out that it's a problem for anybody. I'm saying that this is where we are at this point, and I would like to make something, to figure out how to resolve this, whether it's we want to change the regulations, we want to create some framework to change the standards, or if the standards are what the planning board decides they ultimately want to have, well, then I want to make sure that I'm reaching out and doing the work that the planning board has just told me to do and getting in touch with people for whoever that is. So this is good. I feel like we're all kind of on the same page for the most part, so I appreciate that.
All right. So I really thank you for bringing this forward, and hopefully we can change something very quickly, because this was not the intent, and we have been without a land use coordinator for more than 3 years. We had somebody here for 5 who didn't think one was necessary. We knew that somebody was necessary in the position, because we always had a lot more done with a land use coordinator. There was more communication between the departments. It was always a better thing. But now that we have you, and you're bringing to light some stuff that none of us would have ever thought of, and I believe that we feel as a board is not being fair to most of our town. What do you recommend? How quickly can we get this changed?
So I'm not certain on the process for changing planning board regulations. I would encourage that as think of that as that's the best practice. Make the regulations state what we want, and then we can just enforce the regulations fairly and evenly across town. Now, I don't know what the process is for that, but what I prepared is a guidance application that we could utilize while you were working on that if you wanted to. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, Robert has thrown his hand up once or twice, and I've just spotted it. Can he throw a question out there?
Yeah, I'd just like to address a lot of these issues. I wholeheartedly agree with Laura on all the problems that this could generate. And I don't think it was the intent of the town people to have this apply on every project that you can imagine. It makes sense on a major project where you might have massive parking areas and water runoff and things like that, but those are pretty well addressed by civil engineers, and they're usually required to provide that information. I'm really concerned when it comes down to a simple homeowner who, A, is ignorant to the bylaw, and 2, would be an enforcement nightmare. Plus, there's all kinds of legal implications here. I know personally in town where the town itself has violated what you would consider a water management requirement, only to make things work better. The highway department, I personally have been involved with that kind of stuff.
Isn't the highway department exempt? I
There
thought they were exempt.
Yes, I'm probably the worst offender.
Yeah,
There are very specific exemptions that are spelled out, which includes, it's in the regulations. There are very specific exemptions, which in many ways, a lot of those kind of things, a lot of highway work and roadway work is included in that. Yeah.
I think if we're going to go through this, and I think we need to, we should look at the bylaw very critically. And if we're going to make recommendations for changes, to cover everything that's in there, and so that it, A, will function properly, be fair to the citizens of this town, and not create a bureaucracy here that will be dealing with every application and every permit, and then the question of how do you educate the public that it's there. So there are certain size projects, major ones, where any developer would anticipate things like that and look for those bylaws. But I get involved with people, simple homeowners, that don't realize the zoning bylaws impacting their property before they even buy their land. And so to encourage that kind of problem I don't want to encourage that. I want to find a solution to make it reasonable, realistic, and practical. And so that we're not burdening your job or the building department's job or, a lot of people with expenses that may not be needed. And so I would make a motion that the board gets a copy of the current bylaw and takes a close examination of all of this. I appreciate your effort in trying to find a quick remedy, and that could be done just by, like you say, doing some with the all project phrase there. But I'm really concerned what else it says. I think it would be in the town's best interest that we take a closer look at this, determine what we think the town intended here, I get very nervous when I'm giving the discretion of what's a major and minor project to somebody I don't even know, and their abilities and qualifications to make those determinations. So that's what I would propose, Laura, is that I think it is our job to look at this, and but if I'm going to do it, I really want to make sure it's going to be wholesome.
Okay, well, I appreciate your opinion, Robert. I don't think we need a motion to look at the bylaw. But we will. Okay. And I think now, Mike, are you okay with his comments? And could you please go on with the? I saw the application for determination of no significant impact, and this would actually be added to the regulations, right?
That could be one thing. So again, I'm going to admit what I don't know. I don't know how the process for the planning board to change their own regulations. Because that's the thing to remember is the fact that we have stormwater management is a bylaw, but this whole major, minor, all that implementation stuff, that's just a planning board regulation. It's solely in your purview. So I would never feel appropriate ignoring the regulations or without some specific guidance, even if it didn't make sense, even whatever my personal bias is, I follow the regulations. That's the
That
fair thing.
is
And you guys,
under-
that's,
Right. That is
Yeah.
under planning board purview. It is not a bylaw change. The regulations are under our purview. So, having said that, your application here,
I'll share that now so that folks
Yeah.
can see what we're looking at.
because my question is, application for determination of no significant impact. This is if we, as a planning board, say we would like to now use this application. Usually an application to me means there's a fee associated with it. Are you intending a fee associated with this application?
There is a fee listed on the bottom of $25.
And
And that's just, again, just something to cover the administrative costs.
yeah, but I don't see why I don't see it on, oh yeah, I see. Fees.
Yeah. I'll scroll right on down.
Okay, I personally, and this, okay, again, it's my personal opinion, and we can go with an opinion of each member of the board, actually. I'm not looking to charge a town resident who's going to be doing a small project, like say that little sandbox area or whatever the minuscule amount is, a fee. You know, if you just want a form saying, okay, the people are going to report what they're doing and you can have it on file that that's what they did, then fine, let them do that. But you know right off the bat, if it's a small project, it's not going to need to be stormwater. It's not going to need it.
That's
Okay.
why I encourage the idea of looking at the regulations as like the permanent solution, because this gives us some way that for the applicants that are coming in right now with questions about this, that there is a way that we can say, you can have your project without doing a stormwater management major minor category. Because right now there isn't any of that. Right now, if you come in, you have to do a minor according to the regulations. And I honestly just need something official from you guys. If that is not what you want me to do, is to follow that specific regulation, I just need something official from you guys. This was just one way of doing it and having some records attached to it. Again, any of this can change.
Okay, I think what might be helpful is if you could screen share with us the regulations and what part we could change, because we can change those regulations at a meeting. It's not something that our regulations do not need a public hearing.
Okay.
And Beth can, she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the regulations are under the planning board only.
That's correct.
Okay,
All right.
so, and if we see that in 2014, they made an error, and I don't know who was on the board. I don't know who presented this in 2014. I wasn't on the board. So I would like you as someone who has looked at the regulations, point out where you think we can make a change that is more helpful to you, and the board can discuss that and change it.
Perfect. That's even easier than a form. I
We
like that.
don't have to make this
Good.
harder than what it is.
I'm glad. I think we're all working towards that same goal, and I was just trying to give you as many options as I could. I wasn't sure how long it took. But, so can you guys see, I don't know if you're looking at, can you see the stormwater regulations now?
Let's we see them.
All right. So there's many, many pages of this. Like I said, like you guys were talking about, it's a great day to go through. They did a really good job of trying to make this accessible, and so they have a really nice, handy chart you can easily check and see where your project fits in. I think all of this stuff is great. I think everything in this chart is very good. I think it's well thought out. I don't think there's a problem here. The only thing that really comes up, where is the section for all applications? Is it before or after this? Forgive me while I scroll. I hope no one gets motion sick.
Hey, let's just stop. Let's just stop up here. No. Put her
sorry.
back on.
All right.
Get back on the
I will-
screen.
I got very excited. All right, here we go. Okay. So this is the regulations right up here. from the beginning. They're on, so these
No,
are on
something
E-code
caught
on the
my
website.
eye. Go back
Anyone
up.
can get these. Up, right at the top?
Well, something caught my eye about when it said the 40 to 60,000 square feet. So
Yeah, hold on a second.
single residence or subdivision, and it says within the last 5 years.
There.
To me, that means anything before the last 5 years is not under this regulation. Why does that say that? I mean, I'm not particularly asking you because you didn't write it, but that catches my eye right away,
Yes.
okay? Because
Mike, yeah, so that would be a question of, so that says within the last 5 years. Does that mean that the application was put in the last 5 years or before the last 5 years, or the house pre-existed? Because, and that, again, that's a great thing that I would encourage you guys to dig into. So let's say I have a house that it's been in the property for 10 years, for 100 years in town. I want to level it to the ground, put in a new foundation and a brand new house. Does that count as pre-existing still, or is it something totally different? I think we all kind of would imagine what the intent is, but in terms of just making sure this is fair for everyone. And again, that's for minor projects, and minor projects don't need to go to the planning board. The drawings for minor projects could be hand-drawn notes. Like the minor project requirements are very simple, but they are still a process. Minor projects they need just, hey, we're addressing stormwater while the project is happening. Doesn't have the same reporting that major projects have. There's no annual inspections. A good example of a minor project we have right now, just to give you a context, is there's a homeowner that wanted to regrade their yard, raise it up, make it more level with the rest of the yard. They've been bringing in fill and dumping it, and we got a call from a neighbor because rainfall was causing the sediment to run down the hill into their yard. So we went out, we talked to them, we figured out it's over 1,000 feet, it's over 15% slope. So you can see right here, 1,000 feet, 15% slope. And so we said, hey, you need a stormwater management, minor project. So he's making up some hand-drawn notes. He's putting a couple of hay bales out there to stop the rain from washing the sand into the neighbor's yard. And then he's going to move forward with the project. And he's even going to be like, oh, I'm going to put some bushes on the lawn and a couple of trees to help hold the embankment. We're like, great, that all sounds awesome. I love when you plant stuff in the area. So that's a great example of a minor project. It's very simple, it's straightforward, but it is still a process. It still does take staff time to go out and meet, have discussions, help applicants. We always share all the regulations for stuff like that. So for a lot of these things that are automatically in the minor project category, I think those are great. I think those are really great metrics. The major projects, again, these are very large projects. Subdivisions. And again, all of these have specific adjustments if there's an extra slope. If you're over 15% slope, or if you're cutting more than 4 feet deep into the soil, like that causes things with smaller footprints to become bigger areas because they have bigger impact. Like this homeowner who has, he's not doing a lot of work, but because he's not doing a lot of work on a hill, it's affecting his neighbors, it's affecting stormwater management in the community. So these, again, if you wanted to revisit these, that would be a great thing to do, but I would suggest really spending a lot of comprehensive time in revisiting these standards. And again, this is just a chart, and each of these is broken down and explained further in the regulations. And they all have the preface with shall include but not be limited to. And so I take these as like the minimum benchmarks. If you are doing 1,000 foot project, 1,000 square foot project that you're cutting 4 feet into the ground, you have to have a stormwater minor permit. These are the levels of thresholds, but there's nothing below minor. And so there's nothing that, if it's that's the section that is kind of missing in a way. So let me find the section where it says all applications, all projects. And I apologize for scrolling. Actually, I don't have to scroll. I can look at the regulations right in front of me on paper and I'll find it faster. Here we go, 175.44. Right there, all projects. And those two words are really why anyone that's not major and not minor is getting caught in this because it specifically says all projects. Now, you could simply change all projects to all projects in the major minor category. And that's it. That would do it. That would mean that I could then say, oh, you don't fit major, you don't fit minor, you don't need stormwater management. And then you can substantively review major, minor, and just say, oh, I want this to be more major or this to be more minor or anything like that. You could change all those thresholds, and that I would really encourage you guys to do to make sure it reflects what you feel is most appropriate. But just changing those two words would help a lot right now with where we're at.
We can actually, if the board pleases, can make a motion to change those words right now. If they vote it in the affirmative, it can be changed.
Hey, Lauren, I was actually just about to say it before you started talking. I was about to say, can I make a motion to take Mike Crowley's consideration to add those words
I second the motion.
to that?
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have a first and we have a second. Beth, do you have the motion?
It makes a lot of sense because the way that he explains it, it's you have the lead. Like we having the old projects just picks up everything. So yeah.
Okay,
Makes
so we'll
sense.
start with that minor
Beth,
change.
I know you like language, Beth. So how does this sound? All projects determined as major or minor as the proposed alteration. Instead
Yes.
of all projects determined as major or minor.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
That would be my motion to accept Mike Crowley's wording that he just said at that moment.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion?
I do.
Robert?
I'm sorry, I got interrupted with a call here. I have a real problem with a lot of this. It seems easier to define what a major project is. And I don't think we have any problems with that. And I think my suggestion here in this motion that's being voted on is a Band-Aid job for now. However, there's a lot of language in here that would require, like the example you just gave about the resident that wanted to raise his lawn, would burden them with all kinds of civil engineering work. Some of it may be appropriate because if it's a dramatic change to topography, I can understand.
Hey, Rob, can I just, I hate to cut you off. I don't mean to do it. The verbiage that we're voting on for this motion is just changing this. We are going to be revisiting major, minor, and changing those guidelines because I 100% agree with you. It needs to be a little bit more transparent. It needs to be a little bit more easier to follow so people can stay in compliance with the stormwater management. So we're just changing this verbiage right here for all projects. So it says the major and minor, and then we're going to go revisit the guidelines of what major and minor is so we can keep people in compliance. And this will help because, I mean, right now, you could be putting a garden in your property and you're technically in violation. So that's why we're changing this, and then we're going to go revisit the guidelines. So that's definitely coming down the pipe as well too just now, but we have to make we're voting on just this motion that I made to change this verbiage right here on 175-44.
I
Okay,
understand.
Robert, because I think we will be coming back and we're going to revisit a lot of this. Okay, this is just, like you said, a Band-Aid. It takes one issue that will help Mike be able to get through the process with some of the people. Okay?
I'm in favor of going forward with the Band-Aid, but I think we need a caveat on it that says subject to further review.
I think we are all in agreement with that.
Okay.
Okay, and I will have it, we will have it on the next agenda, Beth.
Sure.
In the meantime, these regulations will be sent to all the board members to review and bring back their comments at the next meeting. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Additionally, we have copies of all of the codes for Townsend and regulations in binders. And I know, like me personally, I tend to pick out details like this when I look at it in print. So if that's easier for folks, they're welcome to come by. Heck, they're welcome to come by and sit down with me. I'd love that. So, sorry, I'm interrupting
Everybody
again.
can
Sorry.
pick up their binder, because we used to have a binder at all the meetings so that we could refer to the laws that we were looking at. That was always typical, but since COVID, we have not had our binders.
Right.
There's no reason why each member can't have a binder.
That's right.
You can pick it up at any time.
Yep, I have them all ready.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Carol Hoff says yes.
In Ortiz, yes.
Robert Therin, yes.
Mike Verosco, yes.
And Laura Schifrin, yes. So those words are now changed in the regulation. And anywhere that where, let's see, where the, who would have the original one, Beth, that you could then make the change and distribute?
What would happen next is, I believe that would be submitted to the town clerk for the final change. So the board, I have a board vote. I'll write up a memo describing the vote and the exact change. And then that memo will go, or Mike will do it, to the, town clerk, board of selectmen, and circulate. As far as I know, that would be appropriate to make the change, this change. Yeah.
So in that motion, it's going to read that the change is made under 175-44 Stormwater A.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the change to be made. Okay, that's your vote. We're at 7:27. So while we're on there, I keep trying to want to scroll your page on my.
Sure. Like if we've got time for the public, I'm happy to have a conversation and just point out a few of the things that you may want to make considerations as you're going through your regulations. And if that's a good use of your time, whatever, I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Well, I think one of the things would be a clarification of the within 5 years. Because I think that everything that has come before us that during my time has been a new development, except for the Country Estates repaving project, which has become a nightmare. That is not a new development. That is a repaving project. So,
that brings up a point I would love for the planning board to consider is in terms of stormwater management, what you're really talking about is rains hitting the ground, it can't permeate, it travels. So there's a lot of very specific talk about area of impact, but there are different types of impact that might want to be considered and included in regulations. So for example, if you're putting in a stormwater retention basin, does that count to the square footage of area of impact? And does it count in which way? Is it cumulative? So if I have a project that's 10,000 square feet of pavement, that's probably minor, but I want to put another 10,000 and another 10,000 and another 10,000. At some point, does it become major, or how does that work? These are all things that I would love guidance on in terms of what the planning board feels is most appropriate, because it is interesting to see. I'm glad, it's an interesting conversation to have, that especially that cumulative, because in some ways, if you're thinking about it in the sense that stormwater is water that hits the ground and runs off, picks up sediment, and then ultimately gets into town-managed stormwater systems, which we have 800 culverts in town that we pay to maintain. And so the best way to manage stormwater is to manage it on site, to manage so that stormwater runs off instead of just pavement to road to culvert, it's pavement to low impact green infrastructure or like stormwater retention basins or something that naturally helps slow the water down and move it back into the groundwater. And it gets less sedimentation, less pollutants get into waterways. And so that's the thing to think about. That's the reason we have a stormwater management regulation in general, is that idea that if you do nothing, it all ends up back in town resources, town water or town waste stormwater management. And so I would love to see regulations that, instead of being restrictive, are encouraging of folks in considering, well, why don't I put in, a rain garden or better stormwater management, or it's already in the regulations. There's something about low impact development, which is those, sometimes you see them in bigger cities, those kind of ways that instead of like the trees grow out of the pavement, it's sunk in so the water can go and water the trees, and then you create the stormwater management area. Like those, I think, are a better, more cost effective, and generally speaking, better value to the community, because then the property can have an asset, manage stormwater on site, and we don't have to charge taxes to manage stormwater. So I guess that's the framing for stormwater management to think about. And so figuring out, okay, now that we know that, where do we want to draw the line between major? Where do we want to draw the line between minor? What is really not going to have a significant impact? Like someone repaving their driveway is probably not going to have a significant impact on the town's water resources or stormwater management. So I'm glad we don't have to include that as a major minor project anymore. But if it's someone's like, I want to, add 20 feet of fill to my property and create, a berm to make my house on, that's probably going to affect stormwater, even though it's probably going to have the same footprint as you would if you were just repaving your driveway. So that's the tricky part of the regulations. So I always will, regardless, and I'm sure we'll keep continuing to find stuff, always come back to the planning board, because it's you guys are the authority on this. So, but that's what I would say to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're looking at all this.
Well, I think that we do. I mean, I think it's obvious when somebody is going to build up that there's going to be something coming down. Okay, and it's going to be going somewhere. But if you are keeping everything level as it was, I don't think you should be coming before us. I don't see the need for that. But definitely, if somebody's changing the grades on a certain property, and that's more than, I don't know if that would have to be a discussion, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, whatever you think would be. I think once you start doing maybe even 15%, maybe even 10% of a grade is going to have an effect of a roll-off. But
I also would, sorry. I was just going to say, I would encourage you to consider there isn't any delineation between permeable and impermeable surfaces at this time. And so that obviously, in terms of that idea of managing stormwater, a lawn is going to have a different impact on how much runoff there is than blacktop. But there's nothing in the regulations that acknowledges the difference between those two at this stage. And I think that could be something that could be rolled in.
Can I
okay.
suggest something here? What we're learning is there's so many variables, every project has its own distinct circumstances. Trying to put this in a text format is only going to generate more questions and problems. I think simplicity is everything here. And regarding major projects, absolutely. We have sophisticated engineering requirements, and those are the things that a planning board can rely on. As far as anything else, it seemed to me a simple ordinance that said, you're responsible to contain the water runoff on your own property, should address most of this stuff without getting into disputes and discussions on the slope, how much it is, what's permeable, what's not permeable. All those things are going to only generate more technical research and investment on technical documents. So I see it counterproductive, and I don't want to burden this planning board with trying to envision the multitude of different plot configurations and topography. Most people only have a plot plan of their land. They don't have topo surveys of their land. So, and so without that sophistication, how does anybody determine whether there should be a retention basin or there should be, the grade is this or that? One thing impacts the other. The topography, the ground cover, the porosity of the soil. It's like trying to manage the moon. It's just like it's just so impractical. I don't think it. I know the intent, and I know these things happen, but they've been happening for generations, and neighbors settle them with neighbors. Okay, so a major development, absolutely, that's expected and that's budgeted. One of the problems that I see here in my office every day is people are buying properties without any idea about zoning bylaws in their community. And I think this, I think personally, and this is a personal observation, has nothing to do with the planning board, but I think that when a realtor lists a property, he should provide the buyer with the zoning bylaw, current zoning bylaw at the town. That way, these people don't find themselves in situations that they never anticipated. So if you've been given the information in advance of purchasing the property, it's pretty hard to say you didn't know. Anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Robert. I would like to be able to regulate how realtors do their business, but I don't think the planning board can.
I know.
So,
But my point is saying this is a very technical area. And if this board was to review some of these things, we're going to be relying on consultants and opinions of different people. Anyway, I think we really got to look at this.
okay,
If I can make a comment, would that be all right, Madam Chair?
I just wanted to say that the planning board has been given the charge of overseeing stormwater. That is our charge. So whether or not we think we want to do it personally or that we don't have the information to be able to do it, because I'm certainly not an expert in stormwater, that is the charge of the planning board. All of us are elected to the position that we have here today. So we may not like all the projects we have to do, but we need to somehow address what our responsibility is. Okay, Mike?
I just wanted to say, now that we've had staff in the land use department, we've made ourselves very accessible to folks. And we get 20 to 30 people calling every month with questions about, I'm thinking of buying a house in town. What are my regulations? What district am I in? We're building resources so people can find that themselves, but we've been really very successful at being able to say, hey, oh yeah, you want to come in? You're in the residential district 3. This is what the regulations are if you ever want to do a subdivision. This is the process. These are the regulations you need to know. And we share that with folks directly. That's why having anything that we use as a standard in a regulation is so important, is so that, because when someone is considering buying a house or considering doing a project, that's what they're going to see. That's how they would inform themselves. And that's in our role, what we do to support them is say, these are the regulations. You can make the fair, informed decision. These are the standards we apply to everyone. We're accountable to these standards. So I'm really happy that that's been a big part of what land use has done in the last 6 months, is just be there to be the friendly neighborhood call and just come on out to the property or have a conversation. Folks can pop in. It is funny because I will get, when a property goes up for sale for town, I'll usually get 4 or 5 people calling for questions about the same property. And I can't tell them, you're the fourth person that's called, right? But it is also a very good sign that people are interested in it. And it's interesting to hear about what other people are considering for properties in the town.
Actually,
so,
I think
yeah.
that most realtors do tell their buyers if they have any questions to go to town hall.
One of the
That they
things that
should
might
know
be
the
appropriate is land use just ordered our first business cards. And I might consider taking a big chunk of mine to the realtors in town and handing them out and say, hey, give these to your potential buyers. Tell them that Townsend is happy to talk to you and figure out so you can make an informed decision. That could be a great outreach I actually had not thought of before, and I kind of love instantly. So, but no, that's a great conversation too. But in terms of that, when it comes down to it, I have to share people what the regulations are. That's the decision-making authority until they come to the planning board. And for folks, that's why I would love to see stuff codified in a way that makes it accessible to residents. So
Okay, we have 5 minutes or less before the public hearing at 7:45. Under 3.4, stormwater permit inspection reports / other related correspondence. What do you have for us under that?
Mike, I didn't have anything come into my email, but waiting. Mike, we were going over and reviewing one of the forms for the certificate of compliance. So we still haven't had a chance to meet and finalize that. That's the one for 22 West Meadow Road. There's actually a form that it seemed like it was in draft form years ago and never been issued. So we're reviewing that form now, and we're going to, as soon as Mike signs off, we'll bring it back to the board and you can look at it and then we'll issue it.
Okay.
You've already voted on it, so we want to make sure.
To have it done, but we haven't seen the final?
Correct, exactly. Because the form, I couldn't find a form that was in the code. So it's another one that we'll have to bring back and have you just have some eyes on it and then issue it.
Okay. Then we have I have 3 minutes left. Sorry about that. That's notices from other towns. Do you want to do that now before we get into the hearing?
Got 3 minutes. I can do that if you want.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'd like to start it right at 7:45 because I'm not sure how long it's going to go.
All right.
And then do I have to read the public hearing notice? No, not at the continuance, right?
No, not for the continuance. You should be fine. So I will read a couple of things from correspondence, just kind of grouped together. Let's see. The open space and recreation survey has been posted. It's now open, and we want to kind of take the opportunity to go ahead and fill that out. It's a 15-minute survey, and that can be found on the website, or you can use a code to access it. So if you could spread the news far and wide. We're getting a great response so far.
Please, everybody take one, hand it to a friend, tell your neighbors to take one. It's great. It's a great time to kind of inform what the town is going to be working on for the next 5 years. So.
Yeah, it's very easy to do. I love the setup. The Town of Pepperell Board of Appeals is mentioning that is notifying that a public hearing on a matter of a subject, whether or not a determination whether the subject property is a buildable lot or not. That's on June 15th at 7:20. That's in your folders. Let's see. I'll have to go through them here. Oh boy. So the Town of Pepperell Zoning Board of Appeals has an application by James Hadley for an accessory apartment to be built above a 2-car garage on 28 Bancroft Street in Pepperell. The public hearing's on June 15th at 7:05 p.m. And it looks like it is, there is remote access. And so the Town of Pepperell Planning Board has posted a notice of major site plan decision. The location of the property is 18 Lomar Park. It doesn't say what the decision is, but it does say it is on file with the papers on the matter in the office of the town clerk. And that was issued June 2nd. And let's see what else we have here. There's also, the board received comments from the Board of Health on the preliminary subdivision plan for the Seaver Road extension. I can read through those if the board would like to hear them. They were not part of the decision. They were not public comment. So if you'd like, I can go through them. There are 7 comments.
I don't think we need that right now. That's not for our, I mean, you're talking about other towns, right?
Yeah. So, and then the open space and recreation, it's all kind of in the folder, sorry. Yeah, so.
Okay. We're at 7:46.
Okay.
So thank you. Okay. I have to find my papers. We are at 7:46, and I'd like to reopen the public hearing for 32 Main Street, Townsend, and a roll call vote, please.
Ian Ortiz present.
Carol Hoff says present.
Robert Therian present.
Mike Verosco present.
And the others who are in attendance. This is a public hearing. Everyone needs to announce themselves.
Robert Therian.
No, not.
Niles Bustler.
Hi, Niles.
Hey,
Michael Crowley, Land Use Coordinator.
Kim Craven.
Hi, Kim.
Beth Faxon, Planning Board Administrator.
Okay, so, Giovanni, I think, is here for
Hello.
as
Right here.
the engineer. Hi.
Hi.
And David, doing the attendance right now for the public hearing. Who is Rob?
Rob is Robert Therian.
Oh. Okay, so we've got everyone? I believe so.
Yep.
Okay. So, Beth, all I have is my guidelines here. Do I just give it over to Giovanni to present where they are? Or do I have to go through the zoning bylaws? I mean, the first thing is that the application is all in order, which was already stated before at the last hearing, right?
Yes, the application was received. You have your guidelines for the public hearing? Or basically, you just explain the process.
I don't know. No. Sorry, listen to everything else. I didn't get this up.
Okay.
Beth, is that in my porthole or is it in a separate email?
I'll get that for you. I can screen share it. If I can get that. I think I have it here.
I have the checklist, site plan checklist. No, that I already have printed.
Okay. Nope. Um, well,
I don't know. I don't have it.
basically, yeah, go ahead with how you would normally run a hearing.
Okay. It's a good thing I don't get paid for this job. I'd be fired. Giovanni, sorry.
Okay.
You make your presentation. I know you weren't ready the last time, but now you seem to be. We have your plans and all of that.
All right. I'll just,
Oh,
if I could share my screen.
yes, sure.
Okay. It says that it's disabled. Host disabled
David?
participant.
TCAM, David, can you give Giovanni sharing privileges?
He has
You
it
are
right
co-host
now.
now. Okay, thank you.
All right. So good afternoon. My name is Giovanni Federa. I'm with Federa Engineering. So this is the food lot. It's located at 32 Main Street, across the street, almost from the high school, but it's on a nice busy road. But so what's proposed is that there will be, it's currently used as a single family right now. A little bit of woods in the back and on the side, but mostly lawn for the most part. But so the proposal is that it's going to be a food lot for just food trucks. And so it's going to have like a picnic area over here. And it's proposed to have 66 parking spots. So this will be a two-way in and out. The cars will, as they enter, they'll kind of go towards that turn right here. They will not enter this way right here. Parking is along here. Then this is a one-way down this path and loops around and back to the two-way right here. This section right here, this will be kind of like the driveway for the food trucks. They'll enter into this area and they will take their spots. It'll be rented probably on a seasonal basis or a monthly basis. That's really up to the client, the applicant, to really make that decision. He's also the landowner. But it's just going to kind of be a hangout spot for food. It's definitely a unique situation, unique concept. I think it's the first of its kind in Townsend. But it was kind of tough to get like a parking count for this because there's nothing really in the bylaws that have something of this nature to have a calculation for parking spots. And so like a restaurant, it's one spot per 3 seats plus 10 spots per takeout section. So, if you went by that calculation as each food truck station to be its own takeout station, you'd have, about 130 plus parking spots for that requirement. It seems a little unnecessary. So it's a unique calculation. I didn't really know how to get about that, but I figured if we had one parking spot for 3 seats, in addition to 3 parking spots per food station for maybe an employee, we would meet that. Now that's kind of a general rule of thumb. It's not within the bylaw, but I kind of figured that would be helpful. But for the most part, overall site, dumpster would be located right here. We have picnic tables over here just to kind of hang out, eat some food. And this is a one-way in for food trucks, so they'd be exiting one way out right here. I do still think that we need a little bit more work on this project for landscaping purposes. I think it would be good for the client to maybe take on an attorney to kind of run through the bylaws a little bit more in depth with myself. But this is designed, so the parking area will be gravel and the these truck stations that'll be mulched. This picnic area will be canopied with some new tree plantings and some existing trees. It'll pretty much just be tree canopy with the mulch, kind of like a picnic and campsite type of thing. The applicant, he got this idea based off of let's see, pictures. So there's a project, or there's a site in Middleton, Massachusetts that this was implemented over there. So he came across this site and thought it was a pretty cool idea, and these are some pictures. So each food truck station will have, a post with utilities, their own separate utilities, running water, electricity. As for sewage, each food truck would be responsible for holding their own sewage and dumping it at the end of the day, or however each food truck would have a commissary and they would probably dump it at their commissary. But this is kind of just an image. These are images of what's in Middleton. It's a pretty cool concept. This is kind of like the tree canopy with the mulched area. That would be similar to what would be proposed on site. Yeah, so, it's a nice casual hangout spot, but I think these images are really good. It's a good idea to kind of see what would be on site. Here would be a bathhouse, just similar to what's on site, as you can see it right here. So the bathhouse structure would be right there, kind of centralized. There would accommodate 88 parking spots. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I still think we need a little bit more work with landscaping, just to make sure the landscaping requirements are met. But I did get, just in the past few days, a lighting layout, and this is the photometrics plan that I had done from an outside consultant. And so the light fixtures, they would be located in each of these spots right here. This was not passed into you, so you do not have it. I want to kind of run through it a little bit more, but just to kind of get a preliminary idea of what the lighting would look like and where they would be located. So the lighting would, let's see the photometrics plan. This is an idea. You can see that towards the boundary of the property line, it's minimized for sure. Centralized within the site, it's more lit up on how that's designed. But as for stormwater, this in the back portion, back area, this would be the detention ponds. A lot of the site would be graded towards the back, and we have a site grading plan right here. So you can see that a small portion of the front is directed towards Main Street, but there would be a ridge line located approximately at this area right here. So just a small portion of the front would run off towards the front. Everything else is just kind of, slightly pitched towards the back. So it would be a gravel base and mulch base, but additional runoff would be directed towards this little back area right here. This would be a berm along the parking area, and the stormwater so it wouldn't jump over the berm. It would just kind of go towards the sediment forebay right here, filter out, go into the detention pond and infiltrate back into the ground, and an overflow where is located right here. This is next to the rail trail, just south is the rail trail, and it's elevated about 20 feet higher than the rail trail. I know we wanted to try to look into possible options of connecting the site with the rail trail, but due to the height difference, it was just a little impractical. And so we decided that we will not go that route, but just keep it within vehicle entrance only. But That's it. That's all I have really right now. Like I said, I think it's good that, we do a little bit more work on landscaping and whatnot, but I'm happy to get the discussion going and talk to the members, get some feedback.
All right. We'll try to do that. So thank you for that. And do I have any questions from the board members? Hearing none.
I have a question, Lori.
Okay, Carol.
I was able, Beth and I walked that site, I don't know, quite a while ago. I was just concerned about the visibility turning left or right out of that facility, because it's kind of a steep, it's kind of an incline going into 119. I don't know how, when we walked it. And there's a fire hydrant right that's almost invisible near the property line. And I wasn't sure how close the driveway was going to be to the fire hydrant. That's very difficult to see.
Yeah, so the hydrant's located right here. According to the bylaws, the driveway cannot be any closer than 15 feet away from that hydrant. Original concept plans, I had the driveway kind of going right here. Once we realized that the hydrant was, located where it is, we shifted it over, and so it's 15 feet away. Yeah, I am aware that in this portion of the area, it pitches up into the site, and it's about a 4-foot drop in some areas, and so this would be graded back over here just to make sure that the site distance is in accordance with the bylaws. The good thing about Main Street is that there's a pretty straight shot this way and somewhat of a straight, but curves more right. So because it curves more right and upwards, you definitely have a much better sight distance for that situation. So I do see that sight distance would not be an issue once it's graded back. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? I just wondered on the bathhouse. So do you have a design on the bathhouse? Like how many stalls and
I do not yet. I think, as we get a building permit or, approvals and going towards a building permit, that's when we'll have the architectural plan to really narrow that down.
okay. We have a couple of guests who are also here. Are there any questions from the guests that are here? David, our water commissioner. So I see
Yeah, I have a,
each of you.
hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, David.
All right, so they have not approached the water department whatsoever with this project. I have major problems with the way they have it laid out. Addressing the hydrant. Well, but first, are you aware that they're paving that section of the road tonight and tomorrow? And you won't be able to cut it?
So they're repaving this section of the road?
In front of the high school and
Okay.
yeah.
I was unaware of that, but I work with DOT on multiple occasions, and they usually say that there is no, what's the word? Mass DOT, they usually do allow cutting it into a newly paved road. They just kind of require a little bit more. They kind of go out, maybe make it a 20-foot wide mill-in overlay or 40-foot wide mill-in overlay. They make you go a little bit over, the requirements. So
getting back to that, the solution that I have for you is that that hydrant is a 6-inch line. If we shut the hydrant off and relocate the hydrant You do your grading, put a back away from the entrance, do all the grading you need, all the sloping you need, and you don't have to cut the road whatsoever. Then you also have to come up with a place where you're going to put your water meter.
Mhm.
So the way you have it laid out now, it should go to the building, and then to the trucks, and so that's some of the issues I have, and it doesn't show a septic system.
Yep, it does require additional approvals with Board of Health.
Right, but that would affect where the water line would go, because you can't be within 10 feet of the water line with the
Mhm.
with anything that's septic.
Yep.
Thank you, David. We also, I think we have a referral from your department though, and those will be read into the record.
Okay.
Okay. Niles?
Hi, I'm the neighbor. Well, we're actually the neighbor on both sides of the project. And I did have some questions. I was wondering what the population of Middleton was that could support such an endeavor. Not that it matters, that's his business plan, but I had another comment on, you were referring to lighting. Townsend does have a lighting bylaw that requires all lighting overcast to stay within the property lines. Excuse me if I said that wrong, but I think that's about what I meant. And as far as the sidelines go, I wasn't sure whether the sidelines indicated there were fences or just an indication of a sideline. And I have personal experience with picking up trash from my neighbors who are in the food industry as well. And I just thought that perhaps a chain link endeavor would be somewhat of a deterrent to that. And having said that, some privacy fencing along there wouldn't be a bad idea either. So those were some of my comments. As Laurie knows, I was a past assessor, and I was a little bit concerned on the town's behalf of what sort of tax revenue we traded from what the current use is to what the future use is. We still have a nice school to pay for. So those are some of my comments for the time being. I know that I had other comments. I do know that perhaps I can show you pictures of black bear in my yard. So you might want to think about somehow you're going to keep them out of the trash cans that are inevitably going to be left overnight or whatever. All sorts of little guys. We're back up to what, several hundred acres of conservation area, which is a wonderful thing. But it does have its drawbacks as far as these kind of projects go. So just some foods for thought. And I'm sure that when you come back next time, or I gather that's what you're doing, is that there'll be some other things that perhaps could come up. At that point, I'll lower my hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Niles, to address your issue, the assessing board did have a discussion regarding this, and we're also looking at, Vicky's still working on trying to get some kind of figures for us in reference to that. Kim Craven?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this from the perspective of Townsend business, and really excited to have someone thinking about Townsend as a destination for a really fun project like this. I would like to give a little bit of support to Mr. Bustler as a neighbor. One of the things that I was going to wonder if the applicant would do, and if it could be part of site plan review, is to have a nice fence along the property line, and maybe some small shrubs for just some buffering. Like Mr. Bustler, I had looked at some of the other parks, such as this, food truck parks, and saw the rollaway barrels, and I thought it would be much more aesthetically pleasing and safe for our neighborhoods if they were encased in some type of wooden structure, or PVC would like that would look a little more attractive and have some better latching. You did mention something about the rail trail, and I do know there is a slope there. I'd love to see, as proponent of the rail trail and what this will mean to our community, if there's any way that they could consider some switchback staircasing with a bike lock at the bottom, with some signage. I do see now that you have your water retention on the back, but just as this, it's an innovative food establishment. There's nothing like it in the area. I think it's really good for our businesses. I think it's good for our folks that are out on the rail trail. So if there's any way that you can do that, and certainly I will not speak for the rail trail folks, but I know that they're a pretty innovative group. And, I don't know if you've talked to the rail trail committee, but they might be able to help with some creative solutions for that. So I'd love to see that incorporated in. And I did notice, looking at your site plan, the example tonight, that you didn't have any accommodations for bike racks on the property. So I think that might be something that you want to incorporate in as well. Now, certainly, our weather gets cold. I've seen some really innovative things at some of the other, they tend to be more microbrews, but they have the nice propane fire pits with the glass. I don't know if that's something you can incorporate in. I really see this as a positive for our community. Certainly want to be mindful of the neighbors and their concerns, but I think it could be a really wonderful addition. So those are just thoughts that I had. Please tell the applicant that we'll love to welcome them into our town. And if there's, any sort of meeting of the minds that have to happen to try to get this incorporated in as a destination off the rail trail, I think that it would just be really a wonderful addition to our community. So, and I won't push my luck, but I'd love to see it have a beer and wine license. I know we just went through that with Honey Farms. It might be pushing the envelope, but it's certainly something that, might be a possibility down the road. I think that it, will prove itself to be a good neighbor, and then maybe changes as we go forward. But I'm excited for it, and thanks for letting me have a little bit of time during the hearing, Lori.
Yeah, that was great. You made some really good points that I totally agree with. And I think it's exciting myself. I think it's going to be a little longer process than what we might like to see. And I think when he was talking about the slope in the back, I thought the same thing. Too bad they can't get there from the rail trail. So if there's any way that that can be incorporated, I think in the long run, the investment of doing that would probably pay off to your food trucks. So
yeah, and to our town. I mean, to say that that's connected to a rail trail.
Yes, and to our
yeah.
town.
It's exciting.
Yeah, very. So thank you. Beth, can we go to the referrals now, please, and read them into the record? And,
Yes.
Giovanni, just so that you know, Beth is going to read them into the record, but then she'll make sure that she emails them all to you so that you can address some of the issues that some of them have had. Okay?
I can email them over after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go for it, Beth.
Okay, the first one is a bit lengthy. It's from the building commissioner, dated May 31st, regarding 32 Main Street mandatory referral comments, map 33, block 60, lot 0. To whom it may concern, I have reviewed the specifications, plans, and application provided by the applicant. There are several concerns I have regarding this plan pertaining to zoning compliance and accessibility, most of which pertain to accessible routes. The ground surfaces being proposed are not accessible. Although some of the parking can be crushed stone, an accessible route connecting accessible parking spaces, rest facilities, retail areas, and dining needs to be provided. Mulch or gravel is not an acceptable substrate due to its characteristics. There should be sidewalks connecting all areas. The sidewalk should be paved, concrete, or similar, in my opinion. And then his bullet is accessibility, section 17.00, restaurants. Section 17.2 says 5% of the tables must be accessible. And then the other bullet is the 17.2.1 is the next bullet, and then it says of that 5% the tables should be distributed evenly. The next bullet, 17.5, dining areas. In open parentheses, all dining areas, including raised or sunken dining areas, mezzanines, loggias, and outdoor seating areas shall be accessible. Section 20.00. This is the accessible route, exec. The bullet is the plans do not show an accessible route as required by 521 CMR, which is defined as, open quote, a continuous unobstructed path connecting all accessible elements and spaces within or between buildings or facilities. Interior accessible routes may include corridors, floors, ramps, elevators, lifts, and clear floor spaces at fixtures. Exterior accessible routes may include parking, access aisles, curb cuts, crosswalks at vehicular ways, walks, ramps, and lifts. These routes should be solid. Section 22, walkways, 22.5, surface is the topic. Open quote, walkway surfaces shall be stable and firm and shall lie generally in a continuous plane with a minimum of surface warping. Again, these routes should be solid, either paved or concrete. Wow, okay, so I have only part of it. Section 23.00, parking and passenger loading. And I'm sorry, there is a problem with viewing this. Let me try one more thing. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. So section 23.00, parking and passenger loading. 23.3.2 is the location. All of the accessible parking spaces are in one location. It is best practice to provide for different locations throughout the site on an accessible route. Section 23.4.6, delineation. Accessible spaces shall be marked by high contrast painted lines or other high contrast delineation, close quote. These plans do not show any pavement. Maintaining the delineation of the accessible spaces will be difficult. These spaces should be solid. Section 23.4.6, accessible route. An accessible route has not been provided, see above. Section 29, floor surfaces. Section 29.1 states floor surfaces shall be stable, firm, slip resistant, and maintained. Section 30.0, public toilet rooms. Section 30.2, location, states accessible toilet rooms shall be on an accessible route. Where unisex toilet rooms are provided, they shall be located in the same area as other toilet rooms. And the next bullet is zoning bylaws for the town of Townsend. Section 145.33C, subsection 2, states parking spaces shall be paved. The next bullet, section 145.52, outdoor lighting. The plan does not show any outdoor lighting. Depending on the operating hours, this may become a concern. Please relay my concerns to the planning board. Any plan approved still needs to comply with the zoning bylaws and 521 CMR regardless of approval. The planning board cannot waive those requirements. Respectfully, Eric Chartrand, Building Commissioner, Town of Townsend. And I need to get back to the other one. Okay, that's the first. Okay.
Beth, I'm trying to get to that file as well, and I noticed that we do have 2 citizen comments that will also have to go in.
Okay, yep, I've got those as well. The next referral is from the assessor's office, and the comment is, from an assessing view, this would bring in additional assessment and additional tax revenue for the town, signed by Vicki Tidman, the principal assessor. The Board of Health referral. Just a moment, I have to download it. Not used to this. Okay. Board of Health. The comments from the Townsend Board of Health in bullet form. First bullet, all trucks must obtain a mobile food service permit from the Board of Health prior to operating. The second bullet, all trucks must leave the site each night to return to their quote-unquote home base, period. No truck shall remain parked at the site overnight. Third bullet, a septic system must be approved and installed that is capable of serving the intended use. Bullet 4, the applicant proposed water stubs at each truck spot. The water must come from an approved public water supply. And the next bullet, the site must have covered rubbish containers as well as a dumpster from a Townsend Board of Health licensed hauler. The Board of Health would ask that this dumpster be emptied weekly. And the last bullet, there must be an active contract/pest management plan with a licensed pest control company. Okay. Okay. The Board of Selectmen returned the following comment. The Board of Selectmen would like the planning board to consider the security and use of the parcel during food truck, quote unquote, off hours. The mobility of the food trucks, in parentheses, ensure that they are not permanent fixtures on the site, in parentheses, and the need for 80 parking spots for 8 trucks, which seems exorbitant. Signed, Veronica Kell, Board of Selectmen Chair. The Conservation Commission, in one referral, returned no comment, and in an additional correspondence that was received today, the conservation agent, Jessica Consalvo, made the following comment. Please have the applicant confirm via field visit that no wetland or stream features are located within 200 feet of the parcel boundary, specifically to the south along the Squanicook River. Off-site water features may have buffers that extend onto the subject parcel. Online mapping should not be solely relied upon for wetland locations. If a buffer extends on site, filing with the Conservation Commission will be necessary if disturbance is proposed within the area. Okay. All right. Okay, we have a comment, received a comment from the fire department. And that comment is, the hydrant in the area of the proposed driveway must remain clear of obstacles and obstructions. That's signed by Captain Grimley. We have a referral from the highway department, which is no comment. The comment from the land use coordinator. My primary concern with the project is traffic at the entrance. Concerning visibility of cars, bikes, and pedestrians entering and exiting the business. The property is elevated from the road, and the driveway would exit through and cut in the embankment. I would want to ensure adequate visibility both for cars exiting, but also ensuring pedestrians and bikes exiting are adequately visible to cars entering. At current, it looks like the only walk-in access for pedestrians and bikes is through the main driveway, given the steep embankment along the roadway. Additionally, I have verified that this project application does include a complete stormwater management application included separately with the project. Okay, we have a comment from James Sartell, Chief of Police. Our concerns when we reviewed initial site plans were the following: security of site in off-season, in parentheses, bar the parking lot. The second, adequate lighting both in the parking/vending areas as well as the point of ingress and egress at the street. The third is adequate restrooms that lock and provide lighting. And then lastly, our remaining concerns revolve around operations during peak season/times, should parking be at capacity, etc. Okay. And the comment from the water department is as follows. Number one, the engineers needs to come in and go over the plan with the water department, the water superintendent. Number two, the hydrant is too close to the driveway. Number three, there is no place for the water meter. Number four, I think it's a 1/2 inch line is too small. I'm sorry, that's hard to read. It's either 1 inch or 2 inch line is too small. Number five, the old service needs to be turned off at main and then needs a lot of work, is what it says. And that is all the referral comments from departments. And there are citizen comments. If you'd like me to keep going, I can do that.
Yes, they need to be read into the record.
Okay. So the first one is from quite some time ago, Mr. Niles Bustler and Michelle Bustler. This was before the revisions, so I'll read it, but a lot of these points I'm sure have been addressed. So again, this was received March 8th. Greetings, board members. Thank you for forwarding a digital copy of the subject application and offering an opportunity to submit comment to your impending hearing/action. As you may already know, Michelle and I own the properties on either side of 32 Main Street. Michelle grew up at 34 Main Street from the time her parents built that house in 1957 until we built the house at 30 Main in 1972. She has known all the former occupants of 32 Main since that time, and to suggest there is no nostalgia for that property would not be true. The house at 32 Main is apparently well constructed by an accomplished local builder, in parentheses, Lopur, and remains a solid house despite its current state of neglect and outward shabbiness. The last owner/occupant, George Boyer, ran a fairly successful clock repair shop as an in-home business from that location. As neighbors and real estate professionals, we would often banter about his thoughts on the future of the property and what money he could realize for its sale. No matter who had the property listed, we had frequent discussions about how it was going. Despite our urging to be contrary, we never wanted to, quote unquote, waste money on a Title V inspection or doing repairs to the house to make it appealing to possible residential buyers, not just the big bucks commercial people. In our opinion, this house could have been very successfully marketed as a residential property. Life is often not fair, and George passed before he could realize any future for the property. I guess living here for 50 plus years means we are vested in the neighborhood. It is just a couple of years ago that we attended such a meeting on behalf of 29 Main Street in support of Dr. Sally Thurber opening up a veterinary clinic at that address. Despite that not being a commercial site, it seemed to us to be a positive use for that property, especially with that property fronting on Pepperell Road as well as State Route 119. Her conversion of the property means that it remains a plus on the tax roll. We realize she has not completed her alterations for the site, but we can report that she has indeed been a good neighbor thus far. From the perspective, 32 Main Street has a number of challenges that you may want to consider for its change of use. Number one, the building currently on the property is a residence that pays nearly $4,500 in annual property taxes. When the building is raised, the remaining lot, valued at $77,100, even with improvements, will probably not generate near that revenue. Shouldn't prudent reuse of commercial property not be at a tax loss to the town? If the house were given some needed attention, it could be returned to today's healthy real estate market with profit. The house could generate income until repurposed for a more positive commercial use for the community, all while remaining a plus in tax revenue. Like other towns, ours has some substantial bills and operating costs to pay. Sorry, I have to download again. Okay, all right. So number 2, removing all current ground cover and then replacing it with semi-pervious material is probably preferred to impervious tarmac, especially with this much lot coverage. This until the practicalities of a good spring thaw or pounding rainstorm are realized. Where does the water go? Probably to lower ground, and that is either over the banking to the packed stone dust rail trail or at the front to State Route 119. We believe past commercial endeavors along this outlying commercial district zone, in parentheses, Duncan, Patriot, McDonald's, etc., in parentheses, were made to address this situation with a detention, or is it retention, pond, with appropriate slopes to catch the runoff. Number 3, I believe the current house septic system stands a good chance of still being in working order because of the subsurface soils present in this general area. So establishing a patron's restroom should be no problem. But if all the proposed parking spots were to be occupied at once, albeit some may be food takeaways, by cars with a couple people eating and drinking, it is possible the subject restroom building and serving subsurface disposal system would have to be fairly large. The pictures indicate the truck setups have power and water to each station, but no mention of a septic hookup to accommodate wastewater from the food trucks, in parentheses, water in, water out, on parentheses. Number 4, there are no sidewalks or crossing for pedestrian access, and we do not need North Middlesex Regional School students further gambling with traffic on this road. So the only viable vehicle site access is from State Route 119, from a narrower portion of the roadbed on a hill with compromised line of sight. The roadbed is closely bordered by high power electric lines, subsurface water lines, open parentheses, including a fire hydrant, close parentheses, and a major subsurface natural gas line. So the ability to widen the road to accommodate a wider lane for inflow and outlet traffic, and parentheses, such as Duncan, Patriot, and McDonald's, close parentheses, from the site is probably limited or at least expensive, and additional curb cuts may not be viable. Personal experience testifies to the fact that success in exiting our driveway during 2 to 3 hours of morning traffic and 2 to 3 hours of afternoon traffic takes great patience and timing skill. It's not just us, as parents trying to access Rainbow School or shoppers at Harbor Mall, even the fast food patrons, and even with a roadbed expanded access area, in parentheses, Duncan, Patriot, and McDonald's. Check the police accident log. And number 5, most of the other food service establishments in the area have the ability to host patrons to an indoor sit-down experience, as well as the ability for takeout. Usually the takeout results in removal of food from the site, as well as the packaging and trash. In this case, the food and packaging or trash may be removed from the site in takeout, but ample opportunity is accommodated for food to be consumed on site and outdoors in all weather. If this operation is successful, it will generate copious amounts of food waste and food packaging trash for on-site as well as takeaway, and possibly even discarded on the rail trail. That same waste will be a natural attraction to the wildlife living in the several hundred acre conservation area nearby. not to mention additional waste deposited to the neighbors' yards. Open parentheses, and despite anything you say, it will happen. We have a lot of personal experience, close parentheses. Number 6, we have lived and watched the changes in this commercial district that now has itinerant trash in most yards. Very loud trash trucks that usually collect anywhere from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. Extremely bright, unshielded security lights, despite our corrective bylaws. And further, especially since the pandemic, vehicles have apparently been allowed to modify their exhaust to accommodate their noisiest childhood dreams. And 7, we've probably all been to Boston and other tourist areas serviced by food trucks with all sorts of excellent cuisine. Personally, we have never seen a, quote, non-tourist, unquote, oriented community such as Townsend be host to such an endeavor. Granted, the site borders the future Squanicook Rail Trail and may provide a source of light pedestrian traffic. These patrons are viable as long as they are willing to safely traverse the fairly steep 10 to 15 foot elevation difference from the trail up to the site. It would seem to us that those lots with existing restaurant facilities have more favorable on-grade access to the rail trail. We guess the bottom line question here is, where are the volume of patrons needed to sustain such an endeavor coming from? Number 8, if the project immediately proceeds to its full, quote, build out, unquote, and if the worst case happens where the endeavor is not supported by the community and results in ultimate failure, what happens at the site? The initial purchase price was for a lot with a house. Then add the cost of demolition, coupled with monies to make the necessary improvements, and voila, you have one expensive, minimally operated to improved empty lot. Unfortunately, Townsend has a history with underutilized commercial property that stems from excess vacancy and the somewhat undeserved stigma of failure. Is there any history of such an enterprise in surrounding communities? I know of no local vendor trucks, short of those visiting construction job sites. Does anyone know of an association of vendor trucks or alike? Where are the trucks coming from? While our town doesn't have a huge variety of restaurants, don't those businesses that are already here doing a good job deserve our support and patronage? Since confirming the proposed use change through your abutters notice, we have tested the concept with a few of our acquaintances. We like to think we hang with generally positive people, but the responses were anywhere from eye rolls to downright rude comments. These may be little more than idle chatter, but if the responses are any indication of the reception to this endeavor, we are not encouraged. We realize your board function probably does not include suggesting alternative uses to applicants. However, we believe there is a better use for this property than that which starts with destruction of a style of house that is in short supply and great demand, especially by senior citizens. We wish the applicant good luck. Even if the board decides unfavorably on his proposal, we believe with a little work, we can walk away whole in today's robust market. He can walk away whole in today's robust market. Sincerely, Michelle and Niles Bustler. Okay. One more. Bear with me. Okay. Again, this was quite some time ago before this particular revision was presented. From Joan Savoy, concerns and questions. She's a citizen. Number 1, is this a seasonal business? If so, explain the heat sources, etc. Number 2, what will be done to mitigate a rush of students pouring over Route 119 after school days to reach the site? Number 3, there seems to be an overabundance of parking spots. Is there any intention of selling or advertising parking for the rail trail? And number 4, explain trash disposal sites and plans for trash pickup, etc. Wild animals abound in that area, and we don't want trash in the water, etc. And that's everything.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
I do have an answer to one of the questions before about Middleton, where you have the other sample, and that that town is less than half the size of Townsend in square foot, in acres anyway, and the population is under 10,000. So it is a very similar town to Townsend as far as the population goes anyway, because we're actually maybe about 1,000 less than Middleton, but we have a lot more land, as Niles already alluded to. And Giovanni, do you want to say anything else in closing for this evening? And do you have an anticipated date that you would like to continue this hearing until?
As for the comments, there was all good feedback. So I think I jotted down some notes, and I'll address them at a later time. As for an expected time frame, I will have to talk to the applicant and see how he would like to proceed. So right now at this time, I do not have an exact time frame.
Okay.
I would say it would probably be a few months out, just to be completely honest. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully the Department Referrals will give you an idea of a little bit of an idea anyway of how the town feels. Doesn't mean that the whole town feels that way, but certainly some logistical things that you may need to address with the owner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So, Beth, we're going to continue the public hearing because we can't really close it or make a decision this evening with what is in front of us, but we can't do a time specific. So what would you suggest?
Well, you will have to continue it to a specific date and time, and I promise I'll post it correctly on the agenda this time. So you have to do that. You would, I mean, if you want to make it a month, that's fine. One of the July meetings, it has to be continued to a certain date and time.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, but hearing what Giovanni had to say, we really don't like slowing things down, but I'm gonna think possibly end of September. Giovanni?
That should be good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Beth, do we have a 26th meeting?
So if it's the second or the fourth Monday, then yes.
Okay.
So it's the 26th?
The 26th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to say, I mean, we got a lot of business done before the hearing, but generally we have a hearing first. So I'll go through the preliminaries and then just have it for 6:45.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I promise.
So just to be clear, you said September?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so September.
July, August, September. So you've got your 3 months.
Okay.
Perhaps you can get more together. I will say that his stormwater plan is in at 94 pages. So thank you for that. I don't understand all of it myself. And my first question when I read it was, who is going to be supervising it? I didn't see where that answer was, but for the record, we do have his stormwater plan. And then perhaps if we have any questions about the stormwater plan, we can get that to you before the September meeting. And, okay.
I can offer a point of information.
Yeah.
Stormwater plan will be its own public hearing. We can combine it with a different public hearing, but it's not part of this public hearing at this time, so we can't have too much discussion about it. It's just that's included because it was received, and I received it as complete. And the board can decide if they want to hire third party to do a peer review or anything like that, but there shouldn't be any substantive discussion about it because, and that was very confusing. I learned that this morning. It's its own public hearing.
Okay, even if it's the same project.
You can combine them if you advertise it as combined, but we're having the site plan hearing tonight. We didn't advertise the stormwater hearing tonight.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Along that line, may I ask if the board would consider voting to collect the fee for the peer review and allow Mike and myself to move forward with the peer review
Of the stormwater permit.
of the stormwater? Yep,
Okay.
calculations. You saw the
Oh,
report.
yeah, I did. Oh, no, I did.
No,
Yes.
we're not going to review it. We're going to
Okay, after I
hire a
thought.
consultant.
Okay, so, yeah, that probably would be prudent to do and have it done before the September 26th.
Yeah.
Meeting. Okay, so Giovanni, do you think that's prudent to do?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion from, I can do that during the hearing. We haven't closed the hearing yet.
Correct. Yeah. It's a matter of the amount the board would like to collect. Mike and I had talked about this. We did not get cost estimates, but from past projects, the peer review consulting services were running around $2,500, and any of that would, unused would certainly be returned to the applicant.
Okay, and Giovanni, your applicant is aware of that?
Yes.
That's the general, okay. So, but if we're not supposed to address it, do I have to close the meeting first? No, thank you, Mike. Okay, I'll entertain a motion from a member of the board to go forward with a site plan review of the stormwater permit.
Nope.
And to accept the payment of $2,500.
No,
Is that-
it's not a site plan review. What it's for is for
Peer
the town to hire an outside consultant. The town will need money from the applicant, which will be put in a 53G account. So we're recommending that the board vote to approve, the collecting the fee of $2,500.
For the peer review.
Yeah,
Okay.
engineering peer review.
Do I have a motion? Someone just say so moved.
Moved.
Okay, and Carol, and then is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll have a roll call vote to approve collecting the funds for a peer review of the stormwater permit.
I think Mike had a question, Lori.
Yep, but is that in reference to this, Mike?
We can keep going, but then I'll ask after that. That'd be fine.
Okay. Okay. Kim, are you in reference to this motion? Your hand is up.
Yes, it was just Beth was reading so much information. My only question was, are you going to upload all that, or do we have to do a freedom of information? Will that be part of a packet somewhere?
What information are you referring to?
All of the letters, will those be submitted into a record somewhere or just read?
Yeah, those are in the file.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Also, this will be televised on YouTube. It's not being streamed tonight, but it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. So that's why everything is read into the record. Okay, going on to the motion that's on the floor. Can I have a roll call vote?
Carol Hoff says yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Michael?
Mike Verosco, yes.
And Laura Schifrin, yes. Okay, so that is handled. Now, I don't see any other business to come before this. Michael?
I'm sorry. I apologize for delaying. So I just had one question. It may have been addressed because I stepped away for 10 minutes a little while ago. The project application for the site plan that we have in front of us includes gravel as the substrate for the parking lot. There is a requirement that all parking lots need to be paved for unless for non-residential, single-family residential. Is this project going forward as gravel or paved? And the reason I ask that is just in terms of when we hire the consultant to ask about stormwater management, that will be a reference to them, whether it's permeable or non-permeable as the site plan.
So I know that the my client, he wanted to move forward with a gravel base, but I will talk to him to see how he would want to proceed. And, I can't give you an answer if he may want to seek a waiver, but I can't answer that right now. Yeah.
So, I guess the motion will go forward as far as obtaining the money and selecting someone to peer review it. However, we will wait until you make that decision to go forward with it, because it may come back differently. Right, Mike?
Yeah. And this, again, isn't substantive about the stormwater management plan. I actually haven't looked at it aside till it's complete. But I just know from personal that the management of stormwater in general is related to the amount of impervious surface. Gravel is sometimes considered a non-impervious surface. Pavement is impervious. And so the project was paved versus not paved. That's a pretty significant amount of stormwater variation. And so I just didn't want, if we have to hire the consultant and pay the consultant, and then that specific aspect of the project changes, we'd have to hire the consultant again and charge you twice. And I don't want to do that. Once you let us know what that specificity is, and I don't know if what you mentioned there's a waiver. You can figure that out on your end, but just let me know, and we'll hold off on hiring the applicant, but we'll get bids. Hiring the peer review, but we'll get the bids for it. And so that way we're not causing any extra delays, but we'll just make sure it's accurate when we get it in.
Okay, Mike. It seems from some of the comments that were read into the record, there's plus and minuses to it. Obviously, it's better for stormwater if he stays with the gravel. Yet others think, I forget which letter it was, if it was the building inspector or the other one that suggested pavement. So there's obviously pluses and minuses to both of those things. So maybe going for a waiver of the paving works for the stormwater. Just my thinking out loud here. So Giovanni, we will wait to hear from you on that.
Sounds good. And,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I think we can close tonight's hearing. And it is continued until September 26th at 6:45 p.m.
Did you vote on that? I'm sorry.
I just was going to ask for the motion.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry.
Can I have a motion to close the hearing at 8:53 p.m.?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing at 8:53 p.m.
You don't want to close it. Sorry. You don't want to close it, because what you're doing is closing the public hearing. So you just want to continue it. Yes.
Closing, right, not the meeting. Okay, I forget what we're in. So, okay, we're closing the public hearing at 8:53 p.m.
You're continuing.
Is it continuing or?
But I already stated the continuance date and time.
We haven't had a motion to continue the meeting yet.
You need to motion to continue. And
Oh,
then-
sorry about that.
So, Lori, how about I make a motion to continue? What was the date you said? I'm sorry.
September 26th at 6:45 p.m.
September 26th. And close this. And then do you want me to close today's or just extend it completely?
You don't have to close today's.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll just make a motion to extend it.
To continue it, yep.
To
Yeah,
continue
extend
it,
it, continue.
and then we're basically closed after that motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
So at 8:54 PM, the motion is to continue this public hearing until September 26th at 6:45 PM. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Michael made the motion, Carol seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Robert,
Robert, yes.
Ian Ortiz,
Carol
yes.
says yes.
Yes. Carol, yes.
Mike
Mike.
Verosco, yes.
And Laura Schifrin, yes. Thank you all very much. The hearing has been continued.
Thank you.
What I have on my agenda is that the next meeting will be scheduled for June 27th.
Yep.
And at 6:30 PM. What do we have on that agenda? Because I actually will be traveling back that day.
Okay.
What do we-
It's pretty open at this point. I think that the master plan would be something that would be a high priority for the board. Other than that,
I
think
understand.
just approval of minutes. I think we're pretty open on the 27th right now.
Okay, so there's no hearings, there's
Nope.
no appointments. Can I ask the board, can we meet later than 6:30 on that day?
I'm for that.
I don't have a problem with that.
I'm
Okay.
okay with that.
Can I ask for 7:30?
Excellent.
Sure. Yeah, I'm okay. 7:30.
You're okay? Okay, so Beth, can you just arrange that with TCAM?
Sure.
And you and I will go over an agenda for that meeting.
Okay. Mhm.
For posting. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yep.
now, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:57 PM.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:57 PM.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Carol Hoff says yes.
Ian Ortiz, yes.
Robert Theron, yes.
Mike Verosco, yes.
And Laura Schifrin, yes. Thank you all so much for your cooperation tonight and your patience. Have a good night.